Earlier, you talked about generalized anxiety disorder and
Yeah.
OCD. What do you see as kind of some components that really differentiate the two? Because, of course, a lot of people are misdiagnosed with generalized anxiety. It's such
Yeah. Yeah.
not saying in your kid, but as you know, it could be a catch-all diagnosis where hey, doc, I'm anxious. Oh, well, you must have generalized anxiety disorder. It's
Mhm,
unfortunate
mhm.
that it has become for a lot of people that catch-all diagnosis. So, how do you help people to really differentiate between the two?
Well, the simple separation, there's complexity, but the simple separation is the wanted versus unwanted.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, OCD, of course, this intrusive, ego dystonic, as we say, disorder. And so, let me take the example of making a vow. Um, so, does this haunt me? And if I could have a really good answer or feel better about it, would that be okay for me to dismiss this concept? Then it's getting at least into the camp. That's not a diagnostic separation, but it's at least getting into the camp of OCD.
Hmm.
Whereas, yes, I get it. People that are suffering with anxiety and generalized anxiety are not like, yeah, I want to suffer. But that's looking at the exhaust of the process. The starting point, if they look at making a vow and they can answer to the question, no, I want to understand this. I want to buy a book and understand about how purpose driven life, for example, how I can give my life, live with purpose, fill in the blank. Maybe I get something more specific on the missionary side or something specific on becoming a priest or going into seminary or whatever else. Uh, is the starting point genuine curiosity, desire for growth, fill in the blank. And that's that wanted side. Now,
Hmm.
they may experience a lot of anxiety, like, well, which school do I go to, or
Yeah.
which seminary,
Yep.
or fill in the blank. So that's my simple separation.
And I would say too, someone with generalized anxiety disorder, often once they've made the decision and they start doing it, that worry seems to dissipate for them a lot versus OCD.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. now that I've done it, did I do the right thing? Right. And now,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, the presence of compulsions is really
Mm-hmm.
the other key experience too. How much time is being spent every day?
Exactly.
Worrying seems to beget more worrying. Obsessions
Mm-hmm.
beget compulsions, right? And
That's right.
neutralizations and these attempts too. So, yeah,
That's right.
some of those kinds of
Yeah.
differences.
And
Mhm.
interestingly enough, curious if you have any thoughts on this,
Sure.
but I tell folks with GAD as well, there's that physical component, which
Absolutely.
shows
So
up with
important. Yep.
OCD.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
So muscle
Hmm.
tension, irritable bowel, stomach upset,
Hmm.
etc. There's these congruence physical features, which of course are going to show up in anxiety and fear and disgust and so forth, but it's not so pointed, so focused.
Yeah.
Whereas GAD, just hand in hand, if you have GAD, you're going to have something like
Sleep
neck muscle,
disturbance. Yep.
sleep
Muscles. Yeah.
disturbance. Yeah, there's whereas OCD, it's just hit or miss. Some people have sleep
Yeah.
disturbance, or some people may have just been so tight because of a compulsion that they have to go to a physical therapist to work on some things or whatever.
If OCD is the embodiment of doubt, right? I mean, the nickname is the doubting disorder. And so I talk
Yep.
about that. One of the things that I've said to people is, and I always want to run these by other people because I always want to be respectful of faith, whatever they are. But I've said, your your higher power could show up in session right now and say, "Don't worry, everything's fine," and your OCD will say, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Well, and for Christians, we have an easy one on that. Just so you know, Patrick, there's a direct scripture about
Hmm.
this that Jesus, actually, this happened multiple times. I don't know exactly how many times, but people started to treat him like a show monkey and be like, all right, well, do miracles. And there were times that he started to deny uh, doing a miracle in front of certain people, specifically the Pharisees
Hmm.
in scriptures, um, and saying that even if someone were to rise from the dead, you wouldn't believe, which is correct. Like, and so highlighting spiritual, and this is how this crosses. Somebody who has enough knowledge to just even reference this. You don't have to be a Christian. You can know that. Oh, hey, for somebody who's a Christian coming into the office, do you believe that it's possible that God could do something and you could not you believe that, you could deny that. Now, is it also possible, more to the positive for you, that you could think that you're doubting and not actually doubt? Or you could be worried and Jesus is like, you're good.
Mhm.
Hey, I love you. You're, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Is that possible? Scripturally.
Scripture, yeah. OCD, that is to me the thing that is the hardest part of working with people who have OCD, is having them accept the fact that I can know something rationally and I could feel something totally fight, flight, or freeze
Mm-hmm.
response about that thing, and
Mm-hmm.
interpret that as that it must mean that there's
Mm-hmm.
something wrong, without just
Yeah.
recognizing that that's just the way that OCD works and what it does. And if you can accept the fact that you may hold on to a belief and still have anxiety about it, but that it doesn't mean that it has to be anything other than OCD, then I think you're pretty golden. And that's where we
That's
try to
right.
get people to, if we can. You know?
And that's where there can be a general leap of faith, but even a specific leap of faith. So for the general leap of faith, we all have to come up to the edge of that cliff, no matter what it feels like. And for some, it feels bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But to say, can I really trust in this and not do my compulsions? That's a general leap of faith. But to me, there's that specific leap of faith. And it's really cool because that same Christian that comes in that's like, I can't do whatever this ERP thing is because, it's against my faith and I need to do it through more exclusively spiritual means. Then it can get into it and be like, well, scriptures say, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart,
Yeah.
as if working unto the Lord and not for man. And Jesus himself said that there's various types of diseases that Matthew 4, I believe it is, that Jesus healed specifically various types of diseases, referencing seizures, paralytics, demon possession. Why would it have this whole list if it's only spiritual? Paul to Timothy, when he had a tummy ache, his stomach was aching, Paul told him to take a physical treatment. He said, take some wine for your stomach.
Yeah.
And what? Like, shouldn't he have said, you need to pray about it, bro?
Yeah. I think there's combinations, right? There's the parable of if you find yourself in the middle of the ocean in a rowboat, it's fine to pray, but also start rowing toward the shore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I love the joke of the flood coming and the guy who turns away everybody, and then
I'm waiting for God.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for God.
yeah, and then he gets to heaven and mad at God. And he's like, and God's like, well, what'd you want? I sent you a Humvee, a boat, and a helicopter. I don't know what you were looking for, right?
Waiting for one of those Chicago hot dogs,
Yeah,
and deep dish
Deep dish
pizza as well.
Yeah, exactly. I just because it's fun to bounce opinions off of each other. The other thing that I've sometimes said to people is, instead of waiting for the miracle to happen, why don't you make the miracle happen? I don't know what your thought on that is.
Yeah. I think a lot of Christians would be like, yeah. It's God who does the miracles. But where I would join with you, and this is why we just need to slow down. And folks, before they dismiss something, they hear people talking about all sorts of exposures that seem wild, fill in the blank, is to slow down and explore, what do we mean exactly by that?
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, if that sentiment is that we're to join with, even from a spiritual standpoint, join with the work of God,
there we go,
and join with, then are we supposed to step into that actively, even if we can't enact that, even if we can't, only God is the only one who can facilitate that. Is that fair to riff off of it in that way?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about this. There's so many different ways to talk about it and to be philosophical about it and have these conversations.
And talking about it is huge.
Yes.
And that's where, if first I struggled, definitely as a Christian, with jumping on the Faith and OCD, originally Task Force, now Action Council. And because I also had a lot of these questions and wondered in different ways. And Patrick, it's just, my life is better knowing you. My life is better with these conversations. Yeah. And it's also, I think that this is kind of a good example in our world today of more of what needs to happen, more of these conversations that are respectful. And that's what we do with clients to try to get into their space. And so, yeah, hopefully the person has enough distress tolerance that if you say, what if you made the miracle happen? That even if theologically they're going to be like, well, it's only God that does miracles, to be like, okay, I get you.
Yeah.
Faith without works is dead.
Yeah,
I get you.
yeah, right. I'm not expecting you to turn water into wine. Maybe for me, the miracle that I'm talking about there is taking the first step into fear and facing the fear and learning that you can handle it. Because if you haven't done that before, boy, look at what that can do to your life.
Absolutely. Look at what that can do to your life is a good way to put it.
Well, Justin, once again, where can people find your info and everything?
Yeah, back to my website, justinkhughes.com. The course, all the free resources, have a newsletter on there as well. All of the newsletter stuff is totally free. And I'll include this for you too, for the show notes. Anybody who's listening today to NOCD, I'll give you a 15% off discount on the course. Woo-woo. And I hope you'll also check out NOCD's stuff. High praise from Caesar is Caesar indeed, as was it Cicero, or I can't remember, had said. In NoCD, the people that I've worked with, I get a lot of examples that I get hit or miss, like, well, I went to this place and it was really good, or I went to this place and it was really bad. NoCD is one of the places that I think I've now heard 30 or 40 people who've used it. And I've never had one where they're like, they just violated my faith beliefs. Good. It's either really good or like, hey, I just wanted somebody a little more into the specifics like you, or looking for something specific. So NoCD is doing great work. Awesome. So justinkhughes.com. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. And thank all of you for watching today, once again, on the Get to Know OCD podcast. If you like the Get to Know OCD podcast, you can subscribe on the NoCD YouTube channel or get it wherever you get your favorite podcasts at. And if you're looking for help for OCD or related conditions, go to NOCD.com. That's NOCD.com. We'll be back again in the future with more episodes and more great guests. We'll see you soon.